Hey everybody, I'm Linda Bennett, your spiritual counselor and psychic host for Metaphysically Speaking. If you want to find us, check out metaspeak.com. You can even type in Linda Bennett on the web and you'll come up on Facebook, Twitter, and wherever else we are. So that's Linda Bennett, metaspeak.com. Okay, today we're sort of semi-doing the Christmas show. You've seen a lot of Christmas shows before. They're all there, whether they're old shows or whether they're radio shows that you can pick up if you're driving in the car, or the last couple of years on our tape. So what I'm going to do is cover some of the new information that's come out. There's a really good show called Biblical Conspiracies. It's on the History Channel. Look for it also on the Science Channel, A&E, Bio, and there's Gracie, and look for it on History, the regular History Channel. It's been showing for the last 2 or 3 weeks on the Science Channel, but things tend to jump around. The reason I'm recommending that so highly is there are about 6 shows, but the one we're going to be talking about tonight is called The Bride of God. That's the subtitle of the Biblical Conspiracies. And you're going to say, wait a minute, she's talked about the fact that there's no God. Okay, male God, female God, one God. Male aspect, female aspect, one God. So how could God have a bride? Good question. Part of this is a lot of Catholic conspiracy stuff, and we're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering how meditation can be helping the world, because believe me, in our next show, we're going to be talking about a very important astrological transition that has taken place that affects the entire world, and it's extraordinarily important, so make sure you pay attention to that show. We got a very amusing email from our friend Kristen, who sends emails regularly, and she said perhaps Gracie, I don't know, can anybody see her down there? Perhaps Gracie would be better behaved because, you know, normally she jumps up on the table and she gets in my way and she sort of steals the scene. Normally, she'd be up here right now, but she's kind of relaxed for the moment. But Kristen suggested that I give Gracie her own segment and perhaps she'd be better behaved. Well, I thought about it. We discussed it. She said, no, she didn't want a whole segment, but would I please talk about things that relate to pussycats and puppy dogs? And I said, well, all right, we can do that. So that's what we're going to start with today. I get some veterinary newsletters, and there's something that's very dear to my heart. It's called, the article is called Feline Pain Management. You're saying, what does this have to do with metaphysics? Everything in the universe. Pussycats, puppy dogs, birds, trees, flowers, eclipses, volcanoes, humans, bunny rabbits, trees, everything in the universe is metaphysics. Because metaphysics, Aristotle said metaphysics is the unseen world, is the seen world, and the unseen world together. I say that metaphysically speaking is helping you understand the seen and the unseen world together. So when we're talking about animals, remember that they have souls as well. They may not be human souls, or perhaps they could be. I'll talk about that in a second. Tree souls have tree souls. When I used to say this at the big studio, they all used to repeat it with me in the studio. I could hear them. Tree souls are tree souls, planet souls are planet souls, animal souls are animal souls, people souls are people souls. But if you have been cruel to a particular species, in your next lifetime you are made to inhabit the body of a creature that you were abusive to, whether it's cats, dogs, deer, whatever. You have to inhabit that body as a human, with human consciousness in the limited body. And that's a very interesting kind of way for you to understand what you have done to creatures. And by the way, what you did to creatures, if you abused animals, if you're one of those kids who think it's cute to grab cats and hurt them, same thing's going to happen to you as a cat. You'll be helpless. And as many times as you've harmed a cat, that's how many lifetimes as a cat you're going to have being harmed. So think about that. Everything has a soul. Just because it's different from your soul doesn't mean it is not just as important. Frankly, this earth would be doing a lot better without humans. There'd be no drilling for oil, no fracking, no overabundance of robbing salt water and converting it into fresh water. You can't steal the oceans, people. They're critical to the planet. That's another topic. That's why I have the globe up here, because we have to remember that we're guests. But pain management for all creatures is extraordinarily important and was always extraordinarily difficult because a lot of creatures can't take the kind of medicines that we can take. Here's a real big secret. When your doctor, your veterinarian prescribes medicine for your cat or dog, ask if this can be gotten from your pharmacy. Now, they may be able to do that for you, or it may be that this is already compounded down per pound for your little critter. So if you have a kitten, they're going to get a different script than, say, a full-grown 11-pound pussycat. So it was always very difficult because animals can't take all the kinds of medications that we can, and they can't take the same dosages. So also they were using fentanyl patches for years. And I remember when Sweetie Pie had her leg removed and they used a fentanyl patch, and I took one look at her. I said, "Where's the pain meds?" And they said, "Oh, she has a fentanyl patch. She'll be fine." I said, "She's not fine. She's in pain." Long story, called my vet. She was taken to the emergency vet for her leg. Called my vet. He said, "Take it off by the time you get home. Put her in the bed. Come here, pick up her pain meds, and get home." Within 15 minutes of giving her the pill, which of course is more expensive than the emergency vet wanted to use, the face relaxed and she was calm. And we all know that we've been in pain at one point or another, and we feel so much better when we're out of pain. And the body actually sends a lot of energy to the pain site. Well, when you're not in pain, the body can send its energy to healing the pain site and not telling you something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. So if you've got any kind of pet, I don't care if it's a hamster or if you're a rat collector or whatever, or a baby bird or a cockatiel, make sure that you have a really good vet who, number one, does surgery, number two, is very, very aware of all the new pain meds that come out, all the new technologies, and then you can watch certain things that happen. At my vet clinic, Animal and Bird Medical Center in Palm Harbor, Florida, you can watch surgery. Yes, you can watch your pet get their dental done. And if your pet is not sedated during dental, don't bring them there. Bring them somewhere else. Find a really good vet. Your pet's care is just as important as yours. If you wouldn't do something to yourself, you wouldn't do it for your pet. If you would do something for yourself, that's what you want to do for your pet. Okay, Gracie, did I do good? Okay, she's relaxed. She's happy. Mommy's done.
And then also the gas is a better anesthesia for teeth than the IV.
Oh, yes. There, you know, if these places say $35 for spay and neutering, run. Because they're using the really, really old anesthesia, which is $5 for them. My vet uses people anesthesia, and it depends upon where it filters through the liver or the kidneys. This filters through the kidneys, goes through the system in just a matter of hours. So you want to make sure they're masked down and not just the IV. They will be hooked up to an IV for fluids and for saline and a type of vitamin booster. So make sure that you talk to your vet all about this. You have to have a really good vet. We have a fabulous one here, and he used to teach in veterinary school and everything that comes out. He's got technology all over the place, and if you want a tour of your vet and they won't give it to you, it's because they don't want you to see what goes on behind the scenes. You run till you find a vet who lets you in the back, every single room, except maybe their private kitchen. And there should also be an isolation room for pets that they're not sure what they may have. That means it's closed off, it has its own separate air system. Everything has got to be perfect. Good enough for you, good enough for your pet. Okay, so let's get back to biblical conspiracies. For a moment, let's retreat and talk about how the translation is not virgin that has been used by the Catholic Church. Remember, Jesus was Jewish. We should all be celebrating Hanukkah, and we should all be celebrating Christmas because Jesus was Jewish. And Christmas is basically a celebration of Northern Europe and Finland and the Celtic areas. That's where they got the fir and the pine trees, and that's where they burned the Yule log, and that's where they got the mistletoe, which by the way, mistletoe is a fertility symbol. What is she talking about? The berries are the female, the hidden, the womb. The leaves are the masculine. So you've got the masculine and feminine, which is why it's used in certain areas for Christmas time. Also, if you're going to use real mistletoe, please don't. Those berries drop, they're poisonous for little children and for pets and for adults too. If any idiot's dumb enough to be chewing on a mistletoe berry, I can't help you. but you want to make sure that you protect your pets. And there's plenty of them out there that are plastic. You wrap them up, use them the next year. But it is a fertility symbol. Isn't that interesting for Christmas? Why is that interesting? If you've been watching the shows, you know. So, okay, the proper translation from Aramaic is not virgin. It is maiden. The ancient cultures considered, and still today we consider, that we have 3 stages of life, from birth right on up to puberty. That's when you notice your little boys are starting to get stubble on their faces and hair under their arms, and the girls are getting their little periods, and you're thinking, oh no. Childhood is over. You now have a young lady, a young man. You now have a woman and a man. So a woman can range from 11, when I first went into my menses, to 12, 13, whenever a girl starts, till the time she is no longer fertile. That's when she's considered a woman. So Mary, as a maiden, was just entering the stage of being a woman. Your first puberty, your first blossoming, your first changing, that is considered a maiden turning into a woman. So it's like an in-between kind of stage. That's what she was called. Not a virgin. But every religious group, like Moses, theoretically found in the reeds, in the river. Have you ever seen Africa? Have you ever seen the pictures of the crocodiles diving on top of each other and the hippopotamuses and the 12-foot king cobras? A basket with a child in it wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds. Moses was actually the daughter of the royal family of Egypt. So every new religion wants you to be excited about them, and so they try to create a whole new vibration of persona and excitement. So calling this woman a virgin was the thing to do. And there was, you know, history in Greek and Roman mythology for that. So if you look at the reality, Mary wasn't a virgin. The Immaculate Conception had nothing to do with Jesus. The Immaculate Conception is all about Mary. And if you were raised Catholic like I was, we were told we were born with original sin. And I used to argue with the priests. If you've watched me long enough, you know that I was the priest's worst nightmare. I'm sure they had nightmares about me when they saw me coming at night. What's the little ringy-dingy?
It likes what you're saying.
It likes what I'm saying. So, oh God, no, here comes Linda, everybody hide. And I used to say, no, that means that she didn't have any karma. Well, of course, the kids would say, what's karma? What's karma? Nothing. It's nothing. Shut up. Be quiet. Go back in your seat. And that didn't work for me. So original sin means that you have karma that you brought over with you from other lifetimes. It was not against the Catholic Church to teach reincarnation. It was good old Constantine who changed that. So remember that things change as time goes on. It was never a virgin. Mary was born for a special mission on this planet. So was her husband Joseph. Those were not their original names any more than Martha was. Anything with M-A-R for females was about the ancient thought that all life comes from the sea. M-A-R in French and Latin. Mal de mer, mal de tête, M-E-R, M-A-R, depending upon the language. Okay, I'm trying to pack all this in so you get an understanding, get some background. Well, the biblical conspiracies were saying that Mary was a virgin. They've known for 2,000 years that Mary wasn't a virgin. Everybody knows they created that for excitement. Mary had children the old-fashioned way. In Judea, in Galilee, in the Middle East at the time, if you were betrothed, and you could become betrothed once you had your menses, your period, you could become betrothed legally then because they didn't want you unless they knew you could bear children. So the idea in India where you can be betrothed at 3 and not get together until the little girl is, 12, is interesting, but the Middle East was a little smarter. They said, We want to know that you can produce kids. So once you are betrothed, once you've gotten your menses, you can become betrothed. Just like many cultures today, the husband is usually older than the wife. My mother's side of the family, my grandfather was a good 30 years older than my grandmother. I have a dear friend whose father was at least 30 years older than her mother. And so the reason for that is the man could prove that he could support his wife and family. Otherwise, who needs him? Who needs to have children? Ladies, think about this. If the clown can't support you, why are you going to have kids? So they were a lot smarter in those days. So you could become betrothed, and therefore you could have sex. And the idea was to marry before the child arrived. So therefore, Mary and Joseph were priests and priestesses in the Temple of Jerusalem. There was a temple site, there was a tower for females, a tower for males, and a tower for the general public. This is not new. This is like in old texts. This is in old scriptures. This is in old stories. So, and you can find it in your Bible if you know where to look. So the biblical Conspiracies has come up with an interesting thought. And they're saying that if Mary was indeed a virgin, that would make Jesus a bastard child, illegitimate. And you wouldn't get stoned in the town of Galilee or in the town of Jerusalem at the time because everybody knew who they were. The whole town knew that a Messiah was coming. It was foretold. They were waiting. They knew that Mary was a priestess. They knew that Joseph was a priest. This wasn't a secret. It's a secret today, but it shouldn't be. And so for them to get together was totally natural. You couldn't marry the local baker if you were a priestess. You couldn't marry the local seamstress if you were a priest. You had to marry equally to bring the male energy, the female energy to one God together. That's what marriage is about. Male energy, female energy, one God. So their theory is that if Mary was a virgin, that Jesus would have to leave town to find a wife. Well, that doesn't go with Judaism, really, because he was considered a high priest. And if you know about Judaism today, by 33, magic number, double digit, you know that they have to be married by 33. And they're not supposed to be divorced. You're supposed to pick right the first time. So their theory is that Jesus left Jerusalem, Galilee, and headed to the town of Magdala, Mary of Magdala, Mary Magdalene. You didn't have the name John Smith, Joseph Jones, Susie Jones. You had John of Galilee. You had Jesus of Nazareth. So Mary Magdalene, came from Magdala, and she was a high priestess there. That is also known. That is also in Scripture. So he went to Magdala and found Mary Magdalene. Well, he didn't just go on a crapshoot. He just didn't go chasing after a dream in a fairy tale that he was read as a child. He knew where she was. She already had been to Galilee. She already knew Mary and Joseph. She had already been in the female part of the Temple of Jerusalem. And she preached in Magdala and the town just south of Magdala. She was very well known as a priestess. So one way or the other, Jesus couldn't lose. She was smart, she was funny, she was personable, she could gather crowds, she could teach well, she was known for her preaching ability, and so therefore she was a great pick. He picked good. And so when you read in the scriptures where, in the Gnostic Gospels, where they say that Jesus kissed her on the, well, it wasn't going to be on her toes because people wore sandals. So therefore, he kissed her on the mouth. And how do we know that somebody didn't tear that out before they buried it in the jars and buried it in the caves? We don't know. But we have enough other information. We have enough information there in the Gospels where they talk about the Mother Mary and Mary of Magdala being together. Well, the seamstress doesn't hang out with the high priestess. It's not that she's not good enough, it's just it was considered caste. Caste system exists even, for instance, in England today. If you're not a member of the royal family, you just don't have the right cachet. That's why so many people don't like the monarchy. They're really not pleased. That's not our problem here in America. The problem for everyone is to understand the following. It doesn't matter how old Jesus was. It doesn't matter if Jesus and Mary and Joseph were born next to lambs. This is my Christmas nativity. I've had it for the last 800,000 years, and you can see it's holding up well. I use electric lights on it now instead of little candles. That was actually the first nativity that I ever bought. And there are little lambs right next to little baby Jesus. In the Middle East today, the houses are built so that there's an entryway for the people and an entryway for the animals. They all live under the same roof. Why? Because it's cold in the desert. It can go below 30 in the desert. It can be 75, 80, 90, 100 during the day and drop down to 30 at night. It's freezing. Everybody's body temperature counts. I wouldn't want to be there with the aromas, but nevertheless, it was not an insult to be in the animal part if the house was full, which I doubt. Remember, I've told you, they wasn't just the two of them schlepping off to look for Bethlehem. They probably were in Bethlehem already. And you don't send two people out into the desert at night, even today, because you get shot. Now, in those days, you get stabbed and killed and robbed. They went in a caravan. They're not going to send a high priest and a priestess to deliver the next high priest all by themselves with robbers and bandits. So they were well situated. There's a whole discrepancy as to when Jesus was born, what year, whether it's 6 BC, 1 BC. There are a lot of things that correspond to both of them, including different coming together of the planet. We talked about that on the last show. I looked for that 5-pointed star, and I found it about 3 months ago, which is the connection on an astrological chart. Y'all know what an astrological chart looks like. It's a big wheel with 12 houses. Well, when you get your chart done, there are connections made, whether something is a trine, which is a happy connection, or a square, which is an unhappy connection, or a sextile, which is a happy connection. And so when you make the connection with a chart that was worked up at the American Astrological Association years ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago, you can draw a 5-pointed star. Never seen before, a 5-pointed star on the chart, interconnecting the different houses and planets together.
Is this on Christmas?
This is on, no, this is culminating in October, November. So there were 3 special joinings or conjunctions of the planets in Jupiter, which is the house of kings, in Saturn and Aries, which is a leader. Saturn is life lessons. It's also considered one of the signs for Jerusalem. And Gemini is in there, which we've had many discussions, because many years ago we heard about the fact that Jesus was possibly a twin. Yes, indeedy. And the person writing the article said, we have no idea what her name was. Maybe it was Jessica. So we kid about the fact that if you look at this 5-pointed star, it indicates possible twins. Gemini is a sign of twins, and it's in the conjunction of the 5-pointed star. For all of you new people, chill out, because the 5-pointed star is not bad. The 5-pointed star is the head, the arms, and the legs, with the soul inside overcoming the limitations of the 5 physical senses. Okay? So relax. You say, well, I've seen it devil worshiping. No, what you've seen is a 5-pointed star upside down. People take the crucifix. Do I have my cross on? Yes. People take the crucifix and hang it upside down. Does that make the crucifix wrong? No. It makes the people misusing it wrong. There's nothing wrong with the 5-pointed star. It represents that we're to remember that we are souls. Inside, we are the everlasting essence of the God force. That's what we are. That's who we are. Not what color hair you have, whether you shave your head, whether you have blue eyes, brown eyes, what color your skin is, how tall you are, doesn't matter. Because that's just like an outfit that you outgrow and give to somebody else. Or that you spill paint over and you throw it away. The soul is what continues. So at the time, and periodically, before Jesus, there was Buddha. Before Buddha, there was Zoroaster, who, if you remember, was the head of Zoroastrianism, which is the real official undercurrent religion of Iran. And the real Iranians, as they call themselves, consider themselves to be Caucasians because they came from the Caucasus. And they think they're far superior to the silly little Arabs running around being Islamics. And they're having them do all their dirty work for them, and they see themselves ruling the world. And before Zoroaster, thousands of years before, was Krishna. Now, in between were various women. But the old expression that history is written by the victors, men didn't like women. They were afraid of women because we gave birth. We still give birth. That's the way it's done. And so to take power away from women was to keep them in their place. The only woman scientist that you really hear about is Madame Curie. And she wasn't really French. The husband that she married was French. She was Polish. Yes, indeedy, she was Polish. You know when all those lousy Polish jokes about dumb Polacks stopped? When Lech Walesa started the freedom of unions in Poland and then drove it to the capital and said enough with communism. Then the stupid Polish jokes stopped. How many Polacks does it take to put in a light bulb? How many Polacks this? How many Polacks that? Then it stopped. So the way to gain power is to club everybody to death and take charge. That's the masculine way of doing things. Intermediately, we've had female leaders. My favorite, if you've seen it this Christmas season, they normally show it on one of the Bible shows, I don't know which one it is, and you can find it on the History Channel sometimes, is about Thecla, Theckla, I think it is. And she's the saint that Paul hated women. There's no question about it. He didn't meet Jesus. He came along afterwards. But Jesus, he did meet Jesus on the road to Damascus. However, that really was Jesus. It wasn't an apparition. Jesus didn't die on the cross. We'll talk about that at another show. How are we doing on time? Okay. So you're going to say, wait a minute, you can't do that to me. Yes, I can, joyfully. And if you've seen the other shows, I've tied it in with Christmas, so make sure you catch them. The point is that we are all sparks of God. It doesn't matter what religion you are or not. I would rather deal with a lovely, kind, gracious atheist than a really good Christian. Remember, we're all upset about Al-Qaeda taking over the world. I'd be just as upset, and I am just as upset, that fundamentalist Christians would take over the world. Remember, it was the Catholics that started the Inquisition to eliminate people who disagreed with them, people who had another opinion, to eliminate the Jews. You had a choice in some cases not. Some cases, okay, are you Catholic? Yeah, okay. Go on in. Oh, you're not Catholic? Are you sure you're not Catholic? To the pits, to the fires. Or you got stabbed, or you were crucified. Yeah, they still did crucifixions occasionally in certain parts of Europe. And this was good old Columbus. Remember Columbus, who was supposed to have discovered America, which finally they admitted he actually didn't get here. He was in the West Indies. He was looking for India. No, he wasn't looking for India. He knew exactly where he was going. He was trying to set up a trading, and he was trying to find Spanish gold to give to Ferdinand and Isabella because they were big supporters of the Inquisition. And what did Martin Luther do when he banged up his reformations? He turned around and did the same thing to the Catholics that were done to the people who didn't agree with Catholicism. And what did the Jews do before that? They went into towns like Jericho and killed the people. Everywhere they went, they killed people. And then you say today, well, does that have anything to do with the difficulties we're having? Of course, it's called karma. This is, ouch, that was my foot. I'm sitting on a hassock, not a chair, and so I'm not used to it. Sorry, Gracie, I didn't mean to wake you up. You're supposed to be paying attention to your mother anyway.
Linda, when you're saying about, like, you're not a fan of Christians, what if you...
Orthodox Christians, who are just as crazy, just as fundamentalists. Fundamentalists of every kind. Only want you to walk their way, talk their way, dress their way, eat their way, pray their way. Do everything their way. Read what they want you to read, not anything else. You're not allowed to read anything else. No, no, can't have that. I'm going to sneeze in a minute because I used, what is it called? Loose powder. Pardon me. I used loose powder on my face. I forgot. I can never use loose powder. It goes right at my nose and I sneeze my brains out. Sorry about that. I'm not getting sick. But as soon as I was doing this, I go, oh no, I've made a terrible mistake. Oh, it's too late now. I'm really screwed. It's done. Fundamentalists of any kind only want you to think their way. Why? Because they're trying to control you and they're trying to create power for themselves. This is a very masculine trait. It can be positive if they're protecting you from wild beasts or invading armies, but it's not helpful to be controlling people when they have minds of their own. So I always said I would rather deal with an atheist who's kind and loving than somebody who wants me to do it their way, because I won't do it your way. I do it my way. I'm a yogi. That means we go to God in all forms. I studied all religions as a child. Many of us have. And you don't find what you want in a religion, because God isn't somebody else's idea. God is the universe. God is an energy. God is a love. God is a justness. So when I referred before, I sneezed about saying what terrible things are happening. The people who are being killed now are people who in other lifetimes killed the souls that are killing them. That's why setting your arms down, and even if somebody shoots you, fine, the karma for you is over. The karma for you is over, unless that wasn't the only time you killed somebody on purpose, not to protect yourself, but because you wanted what they had, whether it's their land or their food or whatever. Think of how many armies and wars and battles and invaded villages and villages set on fire and raping and pillaging and murdering has gone on in this entire world, all over the place. When this planet reaches a certain consciousness, we will stop with the wars. It'll happen here, it'll happen there, it'll happen here, it'll happen there, it'll happen here, happen there, and all of a sudden there won't be any fighting. I saw something very interesting on the news the other day. Banda Aceh, that got hit with that terrible tsunami. It's been 10 years. There was an imam talking, and he's also a local community leader. And he said before the tsunami, the question was, how is the community faring after the tsunami? It's been 10 years. And he said, we're doing wonderfully. He said, before that tragedy, we were all at each other, every religion, every political thought, every group, everybody had something to say. There was nothing but dissension and unhappiness. When the tragedy happened, everybody helped everybody else, and it's been peaceful ever since. A little bit of heaven right there, where a terrible tsunami struck. I think you can say, let's back that up. Is that what happened with the flood? Because the earth has undergone many floods. It's a really great way of wiping out a bunch of people, having the sharks polish off the bodies so there's no debris, earthquakes, earth movements, things happening, covering over what must be covered over, like the fracking. People, we cannot exist on oil and gas. We have to exist on solar. Why Florida isn't covered with solar? Well, that was because of the power companies. And now there's a community, I think somewhere in the center of Florida, the complete community, all solar powered, their clubhouse, their golf courses, everything, every house, and they're feeding electricity back to their meters, and now the power company wants to boost their rates for being connected, because you have to stay connected in case there's a storm and you don't have sun for several days. So they're being punished for creating their own power, because the power companies know that their days are limited. So when we treat ourselves, when we treat each other with kindness and dignity, when we help each other, suddenly there'll be peace. When people stop being angry, when they want to stop grabbing you and making you do it their way, there'll be peace. That's what Jesus and Mary and Joseph and his wife Magdala were all about. That's what his mission was. Kindness. Why do you think he helped the lepers? Why do you think he talked about the poor? Why do you think he talked about helping those who needed help, who were sick, who were helpless in their communities? We have people who are helpless in our communities everywhere in the world. Not in Banda Ate. Everybody gets helped. Isn't that a nice way to be? In certain Indian tribes in this country, everybody was helped. Everybody had to contribute in some way. If you were paralyzed and couldn't walk and you made it to adulthood, you had to use your hands. Maybe make baskets, maybe make blankets, shoes, whatever. You had to contribute, and you were taken care of. Your needs were taken care of. If you were contributing to the community, your needs were taken care of. So therefore, if we all learn to get along, which is what Jesus wanted, which is why he went out of his way. The high priest didn't care about the poor. They couldn't support the temple. Heck with them. They're not important. Hungry? Go find something for yourself. Go suck on sand. Don't bother me. But Jesus was feeding the hungry, taking care of the sick, helping the poor. That was his message, along with equality of women, because the Jews had become very, very masculine, just like they are today. You think Al-Qaeda is terrible. I'm not anti-Jewish. I am anti-fundamentalist. And the Jewish fundamentalists who run their Supreme Court over there are very, very narrow-minded. And they think women really shouldn't drive and women should be in the burqas. Yes, Orthodox women are in the burqas most of the time, or at least they have their heads and their shoulders covered, because, you know, it's unseemly. You can't be looked upon. You can't show femininity to anyone but your husband. Why? Who are you? So anyway, that was Jesus' mission. That was why his mother came to the planet. That's why his father came to the planet. That's why their parents came. That's why they were born into Judaism in that exact place with the Grand Temple of Jerusalem. That is why they gathered about them followers. They weren't just 12. That's a metaphor. It's astrological. There weren't 12 Knights of the Round Table. There could have been 53 for all we know. Jesus had hundreds of followers. Everywhere he went, people responded to his message because most of the people in the Middle East were very poor. It was dry. It was barren. It was hard to find really good food. You had to have money to buy the good food. You had to have money to have chickens. You had to have money to buy a decent robe for yourself, a decent toga, decent sandals. Many people got parasites because they had to walk barefoot because they couldn't afford shoes. These are the people, and women. Jesus was surrounded by women. Right there in your Bible it talks about the women of the temple supported Jesus and his mission and his men. Now, the men didn't all parade around saying hi to everybody. The guys went out fishing. If you were fishermen before, you were fishing during the day, and then meeting up with Jesus later on after dinner at your house. Or maybe you had everybody at so-and-so's house. Maybe everybody ate at their house that day. Doesn't matter. They were following him because they believed in the mission of equality for men and women, for caring about each other as a group of souls on the planet. This is a gigantic planet. This is Florida. I highlight Florida because every single day I pray that we don't have a hurricane. And also, if you remember, there was just another plane that went down heading to Singapore. This is where the triangle that corresponds with the Bermuda Triangle south of Japan is. This is a gigantic planet. Arctic up here, Antarctica down there. How do you remember it? Think of a larger hand at the bottom holding the Earth up. That's how I remember it, Antarctica. That's where a lot of the ice is forming on one side and melting on the other. And the Arctic, it's melting. Greenland is melting. Iceland, melting. Not good. And people, of course, the United Arab Emirates is got a gigantic reverse osmosis water plant. They're taking water from the oceans, and they're converting it for drinking. Well, we need salt water on this planet, and we need underwater life on this planet to survive. You can't survive just in fresh water. You can't survive without the kelp and all the seaweed and all the animals underneath the water. So it's stealing for a temporary solution. How about this? Let's turn off all the fountains in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Let's turn off the fountains in Las Vegas. Let's have Las Vegas move to a more central location. Take all the gambling and get it out of the desert and move, because it is a valley, a desert valley. It gets freezing in Las Vegas at night. So understand that these people weren't following Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mary Mother and Joseph. Joseph obviously died somewhere along the line before Jesus was crucified, or maybe he was just held back. We don't know. We don't know how much older he was. We know the custom was at least 20 years older. Unless it was a love match, and then if they were equal and they were both bakers or both sheep herders or both farmers, then that was okay. But if you were going to be a priest, which is what Jesus had to be as the firstborn son, he was the Messiah of a royal, spiritual, royal, religious, royal Jewish family. Everybody knew that. It wasn't a secret. So therefore, everybody knew he came through for something important. And many of the poor people were not happy with what was going on in the Galilee. They were tired of being poor. They were tired of being oppressed. They were tired of being held outside the temple. Only the people who are wealthy. And today, if you go to a resort and you go to a Catholic church or a Jewish temple, you pay to get in. The first time I ever saw that, I almost fell over dead. They dragged me with them. I was at some ranch some years ago in upstate New York. Oh, you've got to come to church with us. I don't go to church. You've got to come to church. Oh, fine. And there was a guy down at the bottom of the stairs with a basket. I said, what is this? And he shows it at me. Now, I'm 14 years old. I don't know what this is. I've never seen this in my life. I was dumbfounded. Well, the father of the kids I went with put $10 in there. He says, fine. And we all went up. I said, what was that? You have to pay it again. I said, you have to pay to get into a church? You're supposed to be able to get into the church on your own. You're supposed to make a contribution once you get in there, if you can afford it, but the church is supposed to be open to everyone. Well, not at resorts. They got to keep the place pumping. So everybody knew the conditions there were awful, and they didn't like it. We were thrilled when Mary's first child was a boy, as it was predicted, foreseen, prophesied. So therefore, everybody knew the family. Everybody respected the family. Everybody protected the family, except for the priests in the temple that let the public in. Caiaphas, remember that name? Well, it was postulated on this biblical conspiracy, Bride of God, that Caiaphas said to Jesus, look, we all know why you're here. We all know the deal. Screw you. I want my money. And the people are rabble-rousing, and they've got to be calmed down somehow. I don't want the Romans racing in and killing us all. So we're going to sacrifice you. You're supposed to be sacrificed anyway, so let's make it now instead of later. Let's do it now. We're turning you over. I think that's accurate, because the Jewish priests had to know who Jesus was. It was part of their same Bible. Their Old Testament is their Bible. They knew. They weren't stupid. Just like Judas, his cousin, Judas Iscariot. Years ago, in what was the last temptation of Christ, I think that he really did know. How would a family that's spiritual enough to come to the planet with a great format of loved ones and protectors around them, bringing the new Messiah with a message of equality and taking care of all, overlook, be dumbfounded that this one little black sheep of the family was going to rat on Jesus? No, it was part of the plan. And it had to correspond with Passover. So I think Judas Iscariot was told, let's get it over with. and he goes and he gets the Roman soldiers. So the birth of Jesus, nobody wrote it down, nobody cared. They cared about the mission. Everybody was Jewish for the first couple of 100 years. Then others who were breaking away because they saw the truth being distorted, well, they were called Gnostics, from the Greek word gnosis, which means to know. It's not just reading knowing, it's knowing hidden knowledge, it's knowing secrets, it's knowing the truth about things. And they're the ones who perpetuated the birth of Jesus, the importance of Mary, mother, of Joseph, of Magdalene, of everybody taking care of everybody else. But this group of Jewish priests that were, letting the idea of Jesus, okay, let's not kill it off, let's keep it around for some reason, we don't know what it is, but let's get rid of those women. Can't have the women gaining power again, cannot have that. That's what became the Catholic Church. Does it matter? No. They used to say there's no actual proof of Jesus' birth. Well, they have found enough scripture. And they've been translating since 1947. They've been translating these scriptures, these Dead Sea Scrolls. And they're still translating and putting little pieces together. Imagine 2,000-year-old paper, 2,000-year-old vellum, which is animal skin. Skin a goat and dry it out and write on it. Not going to be very sturdy after 2,000 years. So they didn't write down Jesus' birthday because they didn't care. What was known as the Magi, who are followers of Zoroaster from Iran, and had been told by Zoroaster 650 years earlier that the special Messiah was going to come in the Jewish religion. And they knew the astrological configurations to watch out for. That was recorded because that was important. Because that bespoke the importance of the arrival of this Jesus. That was important, so it was noted. It's up to you to figure out what year it is. It doesn't matter. What matters is we all treat each other equally. We all treat men and women equally. We all understand that you're born a certain sex because that's the karma that you have in this lifetime. We may do a show on homosexuality and gender bending identification and all this stuff. People, you're not helping yourselves with surgery and hormones and shots. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know that you're a soul. What matters is you're kind to your neighbors, you're kind to people, you're kind to your friends. You don't undo them. I think these shows on some of these family channels are really ugly. Pretty Little Blank, I won't mention the whole title of the show. That's ugly. Girls trying to best each other, trying to out-pretty each other, trying to get the guy. You're 15 years old. Study your homework. Pay attention to school. Don't worry about the guys. I think those are ugly programs because they de-soul people. These scandal shows where everybody's having humpity-bumpity with everybody else, they're just de-souling. We're not supposed to be screwing around with everything that's breathing. We're supposed to be kind to each other. We're supposed to honor each other. Honor your own body. It's the temple that carries your soul around. You're on a physical planet. You need a physical body. That's all. Very few people are going to listen to floating voices unless you're tuned in and you're meditating. And meditation is the most important thing you can do for yourself. Why? Because even if you're illiterate, even if you've gone blind and you can't read anymore and you don't know how to do Braille, and you don't have tape, was it voice on, whatever, recordings, listening to a book, meditation is between you and God. Prayer is when you talk to God. Meditation is when God talks to you. Sitting quietly, inhaling, eyes closed, focused right here in the third eye. Om, or Om Mani Padme Om, which is Mother, Father, God. And therefore, which is where Amen comes from, If you do that 5 minutes twice a day, even 5 minutes once a day, and then make it 10 minutes and 15 minutes, your life is going to transform. Because you're going to know that you're a soul. You're going to know that you're a spark of God. And if you just open up your hearts and minds to God's universal truth, you're going to know that God and the angels are always with you. Stay with us.